Storytelling has been a part of old Indian culture. India is God's beloved land, and this is why we have taken it upon ourselves to spread the ideas that have taken the form of beliefs in the form of stories. Amish Tripathi has been successful in bringing forth the purest soul of ancient India. He has brought out ancient fables and along with it, the grandest ideologies of those nameless sages who were contemporaries to his stories. While Chetan Bhagat focuses on that part of modern India that has been influenced by the Occident, and that is not even India herself. Storytelling is not just about telling a tale in the most enchanting manner, but it is about teaching an important lesson. The lessons and ideas in Tripathi's books are just modern translations of the ideas of Advaita, Dharma, Moksha, and whatnot. But in Bhagat's books, we see a mere fragment of it. This is because modern India has very little of itself in today's world. It has lost much of its identity. And this is the same unfortunate India from where Chetan Bhagat takes inspiration. Chetan Bhagat has no doubt portrayed real-life situations in the most magical ways. But when it comes to Indian ethics, we find very little of it in his stories. But Amish Tripathi recognizes that it was in those forgotten ages that the golden bird has spread its wings of enlightenment, such that India's contemporaries were awestruck by her people's beliefs. And therein lie the greatest tales, stories, and virtues, and the embodiment of India herself. Thank you.
So hypocrisy is the greatest compliment that can be given to virtue. With this, warm afternoon wishes to all my dear opponents and audience. So today's topic is Amish Tripathi versus Chetan Bhagat. So in a vast ocean of English literature, we have many different types of authors. Be it Amish Tripathi, be it Chetan Bhagat, they all have different styles, all have different tones of writing, correct? But before beginning, let me answer one of my opponent's question. She said that Chetan Bhagat does not throw much light over the Indian ethics and forums. But let me tell you, destroying our own history is not good. That Amish Tripathi does. He has his own imagination hub and he is unable to get out of it. In every story, he has to put some or the other, something which he portrays, something which he feels. Everything has his influence over it, be it Ramayana, be it Mahabharata or anything. Any ancient Vedas, scriptures, Puranas, he has no consideration about the ancient sages who wrote it. Were they crazy? As per Amish Tripathi, might be. Also, many people might feel that Chetan Bhagat is just a short story writer. But Amish Tripathi is a great novelist. Although he is. But being a short story writer, he has been able to throw light over the bad things that has been happening in society. Many, the bad practices, be it dowry or anything else, there are many examples that will be thrown light upon in coming times, which Amish Tripathi has failed to do. Is his source an authentic one? The books that he writes, is he authentic? Of course not. Whenever we read Chetan Bhagat, we know that whatever he is writing, we can practice that in our usual life. Can we do by reading the stories of Amish Tripathi? Definitely not. A person who is destroying our ancient history by writing bad or, the things which are hurting the sentiments of our people, of our Indians with a glorious history, does he deserve that we sit in a discussion, worthy audience, worthy contenders, sit over here in an audience and discuss about it? Definitely not. He's claiming that he is doing this for the goodness of the society, but he is not. I want to ask my worthy opponents, what has he done? What has he done to bring about a change in the society? With this, I conclude. Thank you.
India is the cradle of human race, the birthplace of human speech, the mother of history, the grandmother of legends, and the great-grandmother of traditions. Mark Twain remembers India in this way: And today, we have two sons of India who have time and again portrayed the glorious past and the contemporary present of India. On this note, this is Sara and Veeta standing before you to speak for Amish Tripathi in this combat of Chetan Bhagat versus Amish Tripathi, who is better at telling stories. Amish Tripathi weaves his engrossing stories exhibiting an air of elegance and genius penmanship. His books are aimed at making India's rich mythological past accessible to the common man. The unique way in which he interprets Indian mythology is unheard of. His books invite a more human approach to the divine, which evidently gives the readers a better connection to the gods. His books don't tell you who's right or who's wrong. Rather, it defies a predefined evil. His characters are not legends. His books tell you how they became one. Mythology plays a large role in the rituals involved in society and in the way a community thinks and functions. Mythological stories provide comfort by giving the society a feeling of acceptance, inclusion, order, and connotation to this chaotic world. They provide moral conduct by which to live. Amish Tripathi beautifully incorporates Upanishads, Purans, and Buddhist essence in his mythological stories by weaving it in a contemporary and eloquent manner. Through his books, he takes the reader on a journey of the extreme experiences, the sudden and catastrophic events, reversals of fortunes and destiny. In short, his books cast a mirror reflection on today's society. Amish Tripathi's storytelling of India, of ancient India to be precise, is not driven by any extremism, nor is he spoon-feeding it to the unknown. And I thank Amish Tripathi for getting Indians into their roots. Thank you.
Greetings everyone. Prior to starting, I'll say, I'm a great fan of both Chetan Bhagat and Amish Tripathi, and I would get a book autographed by both of them. So, literature, it's a perennial stream of tales, while history, it's a reservoir of stories. Literature, it's a boundless realm, while history is constricted. Hence, we need to make a distinction between history and literature while we're addressing this issue. I have great regard for Amish Tripathi as previously stated, but what he writes is constricted to one genre, historical fiction. Look at Chetan Bhagat. Chetan Bhagat rightly fits into the description of a possible bard for India, someone who is versatile. Be it interstate marriages, be it the education fever, be it the aspirations of the youth. He writes about everything. He writes about novels, predominantly his favorite genre is romance, and even within that he experiments. He talks about notions which we don't often talk about. Half girlfriend. Right, I expected a laugh at that. So while we might not agree with his opinions, his point of view, we can't deny that he accurately summarizes, he accurately captures the trends of the contemporary society. He writes articles, he writes political op-eds, which talk about issues such as pornography addiction, such as mobile addiction prevailing in the youth. While Amish Tripathi talks simply about the past, Chetan Bhagat talks about the past, he talks about the present, and the possibilities that India holds in the future. In his book, What Young India Wants, he talked about the ways in which India could become a developed nation. And while I don't agree with a lot of points in the book, I appreciate him for the effort he took, being a novelist. Literature teaches us to shun orthodoxy, to look at society from an untinted point of view, which history doesn't. Hence, I would say it's wrong. It's wrong to compare both of them together. I would say Chetan Bhagat has an edge over Amish Tripathi when it comes to summarizing the stories of India. But then, Amish Tripathi has to be given the due regard in talking about historical fiction, in giving his own perspective. Having said that, I would say the biggest testimony to Chetan Bhagat's success as a writer in summarizing India's stories is the reception to his literature. It's the people out over there who decide what literature should be, who decide what literature is, rather than a few people sitting with books, rather than the intelligentsia, the intellectual community. Chetan Bhagat's books have been made into movies, be it Three Idiots, be it Two States, and we watch those movies again and again. They find a place in the meme society. Why? Because people can relate to them. We all have had situations where we can relate to what Chetan Bhagat's movies are. Hence, on that note, I would like to conclude.
everyone. Good afternoon, honorable judges and my worthy competitors. This is Sri Shikta from DAV Public School, Pokhara. And right now I'm going to address that according to my perception, Amish Tripathi is very well in writing Indian stories. India, the land full of mythology, with the richest history and the spellbound stories. Knowing India can definitely take a lifetime. Knowing India can definitely take a lifetime. But starting this journey takes just a minute. And the fuel that is required in order to kickstart this very journey must be taken from good books. Good books that are written by great authors about Indian history. In this context, the only author that's floating right now in my mind is none other than Amish Tripathi, the one who is very well known as India's Tolkien and India's very first literary pop star. Yes, the one who has redefined the Indian history, the Indian culture, the Indian past. Yes, the one who has reconstructed Indian mythology and gave us an insight about India through his stories. I would like to object a point that others says that he only writes about the past. But my dear, I think you haven't read one of my favorite writings that are done by Amish Tripathi. Yes, it's Immortal India. In his very book, Immortal India, it has different sections. Sections about religion and mythology, along with social issues, history, and musings. The way he tries to connect the dots, the way he plots the stories in that, proves that he is one of his own kind. His book, Immortal India, definitely deserves appreciation, as it shows about the myths regarding Aryan invasion, young Indians, British Bombay, as well as Amchi Mumbai. Modern India rules, along with addressing the social issues that India is facing currently. It's relating to decentralization, and his books has everything about India. It's deeply rooted to Indian culture, and that can be proved from his writings about the Ramchandra series or even the Shiva trilogy. So according to me, Amish Tripathi is the best when it comes to writing about Indian history, about Indian stories, and motivating us to read more about it. Thank you.
I'm sure all of you must have watched the blockbuster movie Three Idiots. You know, the movie is based on a Chetan Bhagat novel, 5 Point Someone, which was published in 2004. In the novel, Chetan Bhagat explores the lives of Indian students and the complications of the Indian education system. He explores various topics about peer pressure on Indian students, societal pressure, parent pressure, and about how the Indian education system has been corrupted and it's very bad. Chetan Bhagat doesn't focus only on mythology. He focuses on the Indian general masses. Another of his novels, One Night at the Call Center, focus on the young Indian middle class, about their problems with insecurities, careers, inadequacy, marriage, and family confusion. Whereas Amish Tripathi focuses on Indian mythologies, which are part of history, Chetan Bhagat focuses on the current India, the new India. The ancient Indian tradition of telling stories is being carried forward by Indian writers like Chetan Bhagat, who are voicing the issues of the general Indian masses, hence truly telling India's stories.
Stories are memory aids, instruction manuals, and moral compasses for humankind. And storytellers are the greatest educators. If Chetan Bhagat holds up a mirror to the personal and professional lives of youngsters, Amish Tripathi does the same with mythology. With this, I, Akanksha Mishra, here to present my views for the motion of the House. Well, among the board, I have my personal favorite, and that is Amish Tripathi. And not on any random basis, but for vital points and very favorable points. As my very worthy opponent said, and I quote, that he has done nothing but has twisted the mythology and presented it. It has nothing new in it. But my dear opponents, do you even realize that the future India lies on the foundation of ancient India? The golden era of India, when India used to be the golden bird, when many foreign invaders looted it for years, and still we stand here as the fifth strongest economy of the world. All this basis is our past and our mythology. It is not just because our mythology is our past, and that is why we should focus on it, but mythology can also pave our future through the teachings, values, and lessons that it gives us through it. And as they said, Chetan Bhagat focuses on the young generation. But now I would like to put forward a question. Chetan Bhagat mostly focuses on the tragic life of youngsters and romanticizing it. But the major question that stands tall is how does it showcases Indian ethics, Indian rich culture, and India's magnificent influence on the ancient world. But on the other hand, Amish Tripathi does all of it. He showcases the Indian culture like no other. And the Indian new generation can never stand it on its own and can never love this country if it is not aware of its old mythology and its old history and its old past. We should not forget that the very influential countries of Europe also got their independence on the basis of their history. Likewise, we also need to be well aware of it. And lastly, I would like to add that Amish Tripathi not only fascinates but educates his readers through his writings, and he is one of his kind as a storyteller. Hereby, I would like to rest down.
Literature is an equation that cannot be solved. Literature is a depth that cannot be reached. Literature is a height that cannot be achieved. I feel that Chetan Bhagat is a writer who does not restrict himself in one topic. You won't, my fellow competitors, my fellow worthy opponents, would not deny that Amish Tripathi is restricted to just mythology. Whereas Chetan Bhagat speaks about gay rights, about the youth, and especially in a country like India, where youth forms the backbone of the society, we need to appeal to the youth. Chetan Bhagat, in his books, like Two States, surely will tell you that in India, when you're marrying, it is not a marriage between two individuals. It is a marriage of two cultures, and most importantly, two families. Everyone would agree, right? In his book, like An Indian Girl, his book, like A Girl in Room 105, he writes, he places himself as a girl, and a girl in India is vulnerable to many problems in the society, whether it is from the family or whether she's traveling in a bus, she's being heckled, and God only knows what more. In a country where you people tell me about mythology, India is a country where, I'll tell you, Ma Kali, she can represent the Ministry of Defense because she fights the evil. But Chetan Bhagat is the one who shows that how can it be portrayed. As a critic, no offense to any religion, but if he was any other person of any other religion would not like that his epics, his past history, his glorious history is being crumpled upon. He's twitching and bending the stories, and I don't think it's acceptable on any part. Lastly, I'll agree on one point that Amish Tripathi is a good writer, but Chetan Bhagat always writes out of the box, and he shows the human side of human beings. With this, I would like to end my debate. Thank you.
In continuation to my pro-Amish Tripathi supporters, who has more or less covered everything that one has to speak about Amish Tripathi, for Amish Tripathi, this is Sheetal Maik from DPS Kalinga standing before you to speak why he has an edge over Chetan Bhagat from the latter side. Chetan Bhagat caters to the millennials, to the modern Indian youth with his formulaic writing on social trends. Sure, I'm impressed. He is the mirror that showcases the present Indian society, inclusive of their dreams, their aspirations, their successes, failures, love, and all of that. But his writings work because people don't want to do the work. His writing can be declared as a genre which does not go beyond a simple arena. A boy meets a girl and that's it. That to some extent is prevalent in the Indian setup, but it's naturally prevalent. It's universal, just in different sequences. Its plot is repetitive, sappy, and it's prominent in his works like Half Girlfriend, Two States, and the one that I have read, One Indian Girl, very recently. While his shortcomings also includes the character speaking in vernacular languages, which limits to certain sections of the Indian society, it's another thing to have an omnipresent narrator to sound that way. It often overrides the popular way, which is not the reflection of the Indian society as such. So basically, his writings are more or less not an Indian story, to be precise. No one needs an eyebrow-high literature, but to have characters that come out as cookie cutters, coupled with some typical stereotypes that makes us accessible to the general mass, who are themselves appealing to these stereotypes, that's not true. I thoroughly respect him for welcoming his shortcomings and not claiming himself as the best, but in this battle of Indian storytelling, he falls short. As that strawman again, I have a huge admiration for his writings that regular Joes can read. We have to give him because he inculcated many Indians to start reading. But I also thank Amish Tripathi more because he understands the Indian society truly and tries to shape it with the interpretation of the past. Thank you.
Greetings everyone present over here. Drawing upon the arguments presented by my competitors and my team, I would like to dissect the writings of Amish Tripathi. His stories presented are caged in a single genre, that is the mythological fiction. This part of history and myth resonates only with a fraction of Indian population. It does not portray the true aspiration of the young India, whereas Bhagat's writing are those that find a fresh perspective and explores the popular genres, be it Half Girlfriend or 5 Point Summer. These stories have found a place in people's heart. Moreover, Amish's novels they lack in proper representation and focus on a particular part of history. For example, the Immortals of Meluha, which glorifies the righteous Shiva who influenced the entire town. This has nothing to do with the real-life problems of an Indian girl whose problems have been depicted in Bhagat stories. The UK essay that presents Tripathi's stories as promoting the Indianness of our culture is single-minded and one-dimensional. It only represents a part of our tradition and a part of our culture. These have been constituted of bedtime stories which are now not relevant to the modern society. These stories have become redundant and do not hold any value in today's contemporary society. I'm sure people would disagree, saying that these stories have lessons to be learned, but that is not the story of India. At last, I would like to conclude by saying that the past has been glorified enough. It is time to hear the voices of modern India.
A warm good afternoon to one and all present over here, esteemed judges and my worthy opponents. I stand for Amish Tripathi as better telling India's stories. As per my perception, Amish Tripathi is better than Chetan Bhagat. Let us look at his 2 sequels, for instance. The Shiv trilogy by him explained the mysteries and adventures of an extraordinary person 4,000 years ago, which are remembered as the myths of the Mahadev, the god of the gods. These are chronicled by his 3 books, The Immortals of the Meluhas, The Secrets of the Nagas, and The Oath of the Vayutras. The pivotal point is that his books are riveting and build curiosity for the readers. They take up fascinating fictions by building upon India's geography, history, and religion. The series draws a lot of intellectual connection between the readers and the previous books, and are vivid in its description of India's history and framed culture. Similarly, in the series, The Ramchandra, Amish retains the essence of familiar mythological tales, and that is what is interesting. Similarly, Amish books are easy to read and have a page-turning style. They are accessible and easy to read. The Immortal India, the first non-fiction book by Amish, beautifully describes the integration of present and past of India. When one wants to write about the mythology, then there is no better place than India and no better area than dharma and drama. That is why Amish is better. Thank you. Have a wonderful day ahead.
Literature is one of the most interesting and significant expressions of our humanity. Chetan Bhagat's works not only caters to the elite reading section of our society, but also to the general masses. His writings resonates with the common Indian man, highlighting and emphasizing various issues relating to the Indian citizens. One of his writings is Two States. It is not just about a story about a girl and a boy. It is the story of a couple coming from two states. Despite the differences, they face various adversities and try to stick together. Such writings written by Chetan Bhagat shows and strengthens the diversity of India. Unlike Amish Singh, Chetan Bhagat writes in a conversational mode where he expresses his thoughts, where the reader are his diary, where he writes and expresses his beliefs freely. Chetan Bhagat brought a reading revolution in India, which helped in many Indians picking up novels and start reading. Amish Singh writes in a substandard way, which is very far away from the general Indian citizen. Amish Singh's works are bleak and inconsistent. His writings of Melua, Amish Tripathi depicts Shiva smoking marijuana. He also defies Shiva and Ram. We have to decide what kind of writer we want, a flourishing one like Chetan Bhagat or a bleak one like Amish.
One of my worthy opponents mentioned that Amit Tripathi twists and turns history according to his own opinions. But Chetan Bhagat literally creates stories out of his own imaginations, and that too is his own opinions, right? And I believe that it is not about the story being true or not, but it is about the principles and ideas that it teaches.
I do have a question where they mentioned that Chetan Bhagat does a lot to reflect the Indian society in his books. How is he exactly reflecting the Indian society by enforcing the stereotypes of the Indian society in his books? His books are not even Indian in a way that any of the contents in his book can be put in anywhere in the world and that still fits. How is he a good Indian storyteller in that context?
So, my worthy opponent has said me that Chetan Bhagat's stories are created out of imagination. But that imagination has nothing to do with our glorious history, which Amish Tripathi has been destroying over the years. Also, I would like to say that one of my worthy opponent also claimed that our nation is going to move into future based on the foundation of our past, but Amish Tripathi has been destroying it. That is also quite evident. And one has also said that Chetan Bhagat writes stories that are tragic, but don't forget that he has been providing enough solutions and help how to create solutions for that and come out of the tragedy and everything. That's all.
I'll firstly begin by asking a question to my wise friend from Mothers. What are Indian ethics? What do we define as Indian culture? What is Indian? What isn't Indian? By generalizing the whole idea of India, we are doing a great disservice to the nation. Hence, I would say, let's not generalize this thing. What Chetan Bhagat writes is as Indian as what Amish Tripathi does. But what Chetan Bhagat does is more representative of an India we are a part of. What Amish Tripathi does is a fraction of what India is. Amish Tripathi covers 1/3 of India, Chetan Bhagat covers the whole of India. My wise friend from DAV CSPU talked about an immortal India. Right, it's a great book, I would agree. But what does it talk about? Indian history and current Indian polity derived from Indian history. I understand that that Amish Tripathi has put a great effort into talking about how we currently have democracy by talking about Gana Pramukhs, by talking about the institution of democracy in Mithila and Kalinga. But then, is that something which the current populace, that resonates with the current populace? No. Hence, Chetan Bhagat always wins the battle when it comes to diversity, when it comes to verisimilitude, when it comes to the diversity of tastes that can be catered to. Magical scenarios, yes, completely agreed, and magic happens all around us. We have so many interstate marriages right now. How many people took inspiration from the film Two States? How many people, they find a similarity over there? That is what is the purpose of literature. There's a difference between academic literature and the literature of the people, and that is what Chetan Bhagat champions. Universal, repetitive, promoting stereotypes, right. Interstate marriage, how is that universal? A person from Tamil Nadu, a person from Punjab marrying together, that is something which is unique in India. The stereotypes, the whole notion you see around it, that's completely Indian. Repetitive, I would beg to differ. Please read his books. Stereotypes, I would again disagree. Stereotypes are a reflection of the society. To counter them, you have to talk about them. You just can't let them be an elephant in the room. With that, I would like to rest my case.
One of our fellow competitors said that if we take Chetan Bhagat's stories and put it in various scenarios across the globe, it will still remain the same. But that is not the case. India is a diverse country and has various cultures. So if we take the example of 2 states, one of his writings, in there he mentioned about a couple. So that won't work anywhere else in the world because India is a diverse nation. And Amish Tripathi's writings consist only of Sanatan Dharma, whereas India is a secular nation. There are many different popular masses which need to be addressed. Chetan Bhagat does that very well.
So one of my points that opponents said that Amish Tripathi tries to modify and write of his own and include his imagination in the history. But I would like to point and say that the juxtaposition of modern and ancient gives us interesting and unique makeover to the old story. The core remains the same, the soul remains the same, but the packaging with which the new books are done are fresh and new. And this is what that Amish story tried to portray in his books. And another point that I would like to say, that our future is decided on the basis of our past. So why not hear our past stories from Amish Tripathi's book, which will help us to get an insight to design our new future. And so much I have been influenced by the stories that have been written by Amish Tripathi, the sweep and the popularity of the fictional world that has been designed by him. It has driven me to such an extent that not only me, but many of his fans must be eagerly waiting for the Mahabharat series. Although it's not made by him, but the type of stories that he tries to make is definitely making us wait to get new stories from him. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your lovely presentation, lovely debate. It was very interesting hearing you all. It's very clear that many of you have read the books and have done your due work, I think. The rebuttals, which came in a little ahead of the rebuttal round, were pretty strong. I think that's what stayed with me. Sometimes I think you were reading out. That was the one thing that I found, it would have been nice if you had actually made your points without reading out from a paper. But I think you did get the essential elements of both Chetan Bhagat's book and Amish's book. That was interesting. And without stepping into too many things, there were some sweeping statements about why you thought some of this was, very removed from history or removed from what really happened, or when you try to explain the mythology. But I think it was pretty interesting, the essentializing of both the authors. There was some time, I think, where you had exceeded the time, a few of you. But I pretty liked some of the things that you said about, voice of, I think somebody said, one of them was a voice of modern India. I think it was about Aishwarya Priyadarshini. I think she called Chetan the voice of modern India. And somebody else also had a literary pop star about Amish, which was also pretty interesting. I think that was Sri Shishta. Those were, I think, pretty interesting. On the whole, it was a very even debate. I think both the sides were pretty, I think well matched. So it was, I've not had very varying marks to give. So let's see what the outcome is going to be.
Rituparna ma'am, please.
Okay, so as a storyteller, and I think the topic is so interesting that you have two very, very, very popular writers who write bestsellers, both of them. Let's bring, again, I was talking about lines not dividing, but I think lines uniting. Both of them got a lot of people to read, which is, I think, one of the most unifying factors about both the writers. And it's a pity that both of, the debate has two very popular writers and you have to choose between one and the other. And I'm sure all of you read both the writers. And therefore speaking, I think this gentleman from KIT did the most best thing that I would have done too, which is to give the credit to both of them for doing the good things. But having said that, there are a couple of things which I felt was a uniform came across as a distinction. And you are at where you are as a reader, which you will evolve with time. At your age, I think what you're reading is what is also being understood, interpreted with your worldview and perspective. But I would like you to open your minds up while you're debating to understand that who are they writing for, right? I did not see anyone talk about who are they writing for, the audience that they are writing for, and that could have been a wonderful way to distinguish the two and talk about the merits of writing for a particular audience and what their writing has done. The second thing which I felt was standing out, and I saw lines overlapping between both parts, is about Chetan Bhagat being the custodian of contemporary India, whereas him being the custodian of past, which is history. It's not historical fiction, it's mythological fiction, to be very fair to Amish and his writing. And mythology is not history. So as somebody who's a reader, to understand that there are different genres of storytelling, what does Amish really write? He writes on mythological fiction. It's not even historical fiction. So mythology is not history. So having said that, I completely agree with Aparna that reading out slows you down. It makes you tied down. I did see in some people the sparks of their writing, or whatever they spoke of, was not what they had written before they get on stage, but what they have sort of tweaked immediately after listening to somebody else, and that's the true sense of a good debater. You go with maybe 3 points and add 2 based on what you've heard others say. So that gives you that freedom to play around with what your mind is. And again, that's the beauty of a debate. You get to listen to others and rework your content than wait for the rebuttal. And when you've done that, you shows that you are in the debate and you are actually listening to the others. So great effort, and totally loved listening to all of you. Thank you.
So we have a winner, and that is KIT International School. Round of applause, please. May I request CEO Ma'am Lakshmi Menon and the judges, please, and our editorial director as well, Mr. Prabhu Chawla, to please come up on stage to felicitate the winners. So that's Omkar Patnaik, Aishwarya Priyadarshini from KIT International School.